Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. I'm Brian Fisher. You're listening to Focal Point ethanol-free radio. No additives, just high-octane radio. Corn-free. Listening to corn-free radio right here on Focal Point and AFR Talk. Now, this is kind of a kick in the pants. Yesterday we had Herman Cain on this program, as you remember. And Herman, to my surprise, I had no idea he was going to do this, but he chose this program to let the nation know that he believes that the time is ripe for a third party. Now, it's interesting. Fox News picked this up. I got a call this morning. Hey, is it okay if we use some sound bites from your interview with Herman Cain to introduce a segment with Governor George Pataki of New York? I said, hey, knock yourself out. That's fine. We just have the audio for you, but I want to listen. We'll just splice together how Fox News used this segment. You just hear Herman Cain talking. They've got a graphic up there that kind of indicates where he was when he made these comments. But here's how Fox News used the interview that I did yesterday with Herman Cain right here. Let's listen.
Back now to the topic that we invited you on to talk about. Let's listen to this soundbite from Herman Cain where he suggests that there should be a brand new party out there. Here he is.
We need a third party to save this country. This country is in trouble, and it is clear that neither party is going to fix the problems we face. I don't believe the Republican Party has the ability to rebrand itself against the mainstream media machine that blatantly works to support this president and other liberals as well as the Democrats.
So that's Herman Cain talking on Fox News, and then they introduced George Pataki and asked for his reaction, which I could care less about. But that was just kind of fun. That started right here on Focal Point. Now, what I want to talk about in this segment, and my column is up now at rightlyconcerned.com, and the title of my piece is that white evangelicals put Obama back in the White House. You want to ask for one explanation for why Barack Obama is back in the White House. You don't need to look any further than white evangelicals, and I want to explain that in just a moment. Now, there's another, we're going to talk to Neil Mauman at the bottom of this hour more about this, but I want to give you some of the numbers before I get back into the business about the evangelical vote in this election. But it's interesting that you go back and look at Tuesday night at the electoral results. Mitt Romney won 206 electoral votes. He needed 270, so he was 64 votes short of winning this election. Now, Neil Mauman, with an email that he sent out, another piece by Jim Garrity over at National Review Online, kind of put me onto this. So I started doing some poking around this morning, pulling some numbers together myself. I went on the Fox News website to look at their up-to-the-minute vote totals from election night. And so, of course, Mitt Romney, if he was going to get from 206 to 270, he would have needed 64 more electoral votes. Well, I went through and looked at some of the closest races in this election. I looked at the race in Colorado, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, and Ohio. What is that? 5 states. Now, catch this. Those 5 states, all of them were won by Barack Obama. The total in those 5 states is 66 electoral votes. So in other words, if Governor Romney had won these 5 states instead of Barack Obama, Mitt Romney would be headed toward the White House. He would be President-elect Mitt Romney. There's 9 electoral votes in Colorado, 29 in Florida, 6 in Nevada, 4 in New Hampshire, 18 in Ohio, total of 66. If he'd won all 5 of those, he'd be at 272, and he would be the next president. That'd be 2 more than he would need. Now, listen to the differential here. This is the differential in each one of these 5 states. Governor Romney lost Colorado by 113,099 votes. Lost Florida by 47,013 votes. Lost Nevada by 66,379 votes. Lost New Hampshire by 40,421 votes. And he lost Ohio by 100,114. Now, some of these are going to change because there's still counts of votes. But you add up all those, you come up with 367,026 votes. That was the differential in those 5 states. So what you can say is that Barack Obama won the White House by 367,026 votes. That's the differential in the 5 states that gave him the White House. So that means if Governor Romney had been able to pick up 367,000 strategically placed votes, just 367,000 votes in these 5 states, Governor Romney would have won the election. Now, another way to think about this is really what we're talking about is flipping 183,514 votes, because you realize if you flip a vote, somebody was going to vote for Barack Obama, but he votes instead for Mitt Romney. He changes his vote from Obama to Romney. You're actually going to change the vote count by 2, because you're taking 1 vote away from Barack Obama and you're adding a vote to Governor Mitt Romney. So if Romney had managed to flip 183,514 votes, then that would have reduced Obama's total by that amount, would have increased his total by that amount, and that would have made the difference of 367,000 votes. So here's my point. He was that close. Now, of course, this is hypothetical because they'd have to be strategically placed and have to be in those cities and all that. But the point remains, all he needed to do in these 5 states is flip 183,514 votes, and he is the president. Now, my point in saying that is to illustrate how close this election truly was at the end of the day. Now, I computed this up, and there were a total right now of 118,512,000 votes have been cast. So 118.5 million votes have been cast, about 60-some for Barack Obama, 57-something, almost 58 for Governor Romney. That's 118 million. Now, in 2008, almost 130 million votes were cast, so we're about 10 million votes under the vote rate from 2008. And by the way, Barack Obama is down about 10 million votes. He is down about 10 million votes from where he was in 2008. I think I've got that figure right. It's a lot. It's 7 million or 8 million or 10 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that'll be a significant factor in just a moment. Now, if you take 183,514 votes, that's all that Governor Romney had to flip out of 118,512,450 votes cast. That, you know how many 183,000 is out of the vote total? It's 0.00154. 0.001 is 1,000th. So this is 1.5 votes in every 1,000. 1.5 votes in every 1,000 that were cast is all it would have taken to flip this election for Governor Romney. So part of why I want to bring that up, and I'll talk about that a little bit more with Neil Mauman, is that this is no time for conservatives to think about throwing ourselves off the ledge. I mean, this is a whisker-thin margin of loss here. I mean, it was perfectly possible that this election could have been won by Governor Romney. Now, here was what I want to suggest is that, and this is where the white evangelical vote comes into play. I'm going to have Mark Tooley on in the next hour to talk about this in a little bit more detail. But I think it's also possible that Governor Romney's Mormonism kept him out of the White House, and I want to explain that here in a second. Now, it turns out that white evangelicals comprise 26% of the electorate. So just over 1 in 4 of all the votes that were cast in this election were cast by white evangelicals. And white evangelicals voted for Romney 79-21. That's better than Bush did. It's better than McCain did. So white evangelicals voted 79-21 for Romney, and they were 26% of the electorate. Now, if you start doing the math on this, this means that white evangelicals cast 30.8, I'm going to round off here, 30.8 million votes. 30.8 million votes were cast by white evangelicals. That's just a little over a quarter of the 118 million votes that were cast in total. Now, of that 30 million votes, 24.3 million of those votes went to Governor Romney. That's 79%. And 6.5 million, 21%, went to President Obama. Now, the total vote differential is about 2.9 million between Barack Obama's totals and Mitt Romney's totals. Right now, I mean, there's still some votes coming in, but right now, Barack Obama leads the vote total by 2.9 million votes. He got 2.9 million more votes than Mitt Romney did. But remember what I just told you, 6.5 million evangelical voters voted for Barack Obama. And the vote differential is 2.9 million. More than twice as many evangelicals voted for Barack Obama than the vote differential between these two guys. So if you think about this this vote flipping thing being kind of a 2-for-1, take one vote away from Obama, give one to Romney, if only 25% of the white evangelical voters that voted for Obama, if just 25% of them, a little more than 1.5 million, had voted for Governor Romney would have won the popular vote by about 350,000 votes. And so that's why I say it is simply no exaggeration to say that white evangelicals put Barack Obama back in the White House. Now, we don't know why. I've got a story here. I'll get to this as the program develops. Great piece by Sean Trendy, The Case of the Missing White Voters, basically saying about 7 million white voters stayed home. There were 7 million white voters that voted in 2008 that did not vote this year. They just stayed home. And that was a critical factor in this election. Now, some of those were evangelical voters. Now, some of them might have stayed home because of his Mormonism. I mean, we've read the polling data that indicates that at one time, at least, there were 20 to 25% of evangelicals who said, look, I'm not going to vote for Mitt Romney, not going to vote for a Mormon. That the Mormonism is a cult. I'm not going to vote for a guy who's a member of a cult to be the leader of the United States. So there are a lot of evangelicals. Now, obviously, if 79% of evangelicals voted for him, they got over that. Whatever that theological hitch was for him, they got over it and voted for him. But that still leaves 21%. And his Mormonism, if his Mormonism was a factor for just 1.5 million of those voters, if they voted for Obama because Mitt Romney was a Mormon, then that would have been enough to throw the election all by itself to Barack Obama. And I think the chances are probably pretty good that there's 1.5, 1.6 million evangelical voters out there that did not vote for Governor Romney because he's a Mormon, which means that if the GOP had given us an evangelical candidate for the White House, the chances are very good that the Republican would be headed to the Oval Office. Focal Point, AFR Talk.
One cry. A nationwide call for spiritual awakening. One cry. A new movement of God's people who agree on this urgent premise. Revival is our only hope. One cry. A cry to the Lord to manifest His glory and work with extraordinary power. One cry. A call to the church to pray, to seek God's face, and to turn away from sin, compromise, and complacency. One cry. Visit onecry.com.
When it comes to keeping our kids safe, we pay attention to the details. From seatbelts in the car to helmets and pads for sports, we make sure they're protected. But we can't forget to protect them from the dark side of the internet when they're on their Apple or Android phone. Mobile WebGuard is designed to give content control, time and date control, history checking, and more, whether they're on Wi-Fi or cell networks. It's customizable and tamper-resistant, too. More info is available at mobilewebguard.com/AFA.
How contemporary does the church need to be in order to impact a world for Christ? It's a question that needs to be asked and answered as well. This is Jim Garlow with the Garlow Perspective. Let me answer it this way. I read an article once in Christianity Today, April the 5th, 1999, about the life of Billy Graham, and it said the secret of Billy Graham's ministry was his capacity to engage yet transcend culture. Now, what has that got to do with you? You can be engaged with culture and be very relevant to the culture around you, but in the process not transcend its values, and the result is you compromise and you're worthless. Or you can transcend the culture, that is, you certainly don't compromise your values, but you're not engaged, you're not relevant. The result is you are disconnected from the culture around you. If you engage but don't transcend, you're like salt that has lost its savor. If you transcend and you don't engage, then who's going to even know who you are and care about what you believe? Let's do both. Let's engage the culture, but transcend its values.